evening, campers, it's me, Kieran, and today we are going to talk about Franco Bernini's The Throne, which was a complete and utter impulse buy. I didn't really know what it was. I was just swooned by this cover, like how couldn't you? Look at it. But on the first day that I opened this, a sheer month ago, I dreaded what was going to happen because I did not pick up a book, dear people. Oh no, not as simple as that. I have picked up the first of a trilogy. Oh, and the fact that I've read it means that I'm now committed. I understand how the fantasy genre feels.
You weren't expecting that, were you?
Oh, so ruthless yet alluring. But maybe that's the point of this Machiavellian book, as we talk about the life and times of Niccolo Machiavelli. Yes, Machiavelli, the guy who wrote The Prince, the father of political science. A guy... I only know that he wrote this book. I think most of you will only know him as he's the guy who wrote this book, didn't he? But we're not here to talk about The Prince. No, I said we weren't going to talk about it, but I think we need to at this moment. The Prince was published in 1532, 5 years after Machiavelli died. Yes, this is a posthumous novel. But the manuscript was finished by Machiavelli in 1513. The Throne begins in 1501. So, like I said before, we don't really need to talk about this because The Throne is the writing of the Prince. Before I talk about this book specifically, some people might be saying, and it's something that I indeed first thought when I saw that this was the first part in a Machiavellian trilogy, is this just the Italian Wolf Hall? Now, if you don't know, I will link my review of Wolf Hall down below for you all to watch. Wolf Hall is undoubtedly probably one of the best books ever published in the 21st century. However, I believe I said
there are events that happen in this book which I feel if you were reading and you don't really know what's going on, you just have to go along with the ride. 4 years ago that video was published, and oh how things have changed. Take the sticker off so people don't think I'm poor.
But the gist of what I'm trying to get at is, if you don't know anything about British history under the Tudors, Wolf Hall is an absolute nightmare because Mantell gives you nothing to ground yourself. Hilary Mantell's Wolf Hall documents the life of Thomas Cromwell, a political heavy hitter within the court of Henry VIII during the Tudor period, and sees his rise in power and his ultimate downfall. You could pretty much swap Thomas Cromwell for Machiavelli. Bernini's The Throne, I saw this in action. I don't know much about Renaissance Italy. I don't know about the power factions of Italy during the 16th century. And this book was really difficult for me to keep on top of everyone.
What they wanted, why were they wanted what they wanted,
and why they are doing the things that they want to do. One of the difficulties when it comes to historical fiction, and Hilary Mantel isn't shy of this criticism, and neither is Bernini, it's that at what point does the reader's own incompetence, naivety, and just general not knowing about the period becomes detrimental to the enjoyment of the book. Bernini has clearly done his research. He knows what Machiavelli is doing, what the Borgia are doing, what the Medici are doing. But for me, random Welshman who has only really watched Borgia season 1, I didn't think it was that great. And I remember me and my wife saying, we don't know what's going on. Like, who are these people? So for those people who read Wolf Hall and have no idea about Tudor history, going, what is really going on? I now understand your plight, because this is the exact same problem. From here on out, I'm going to drop all comparisons to Wolf Hall. However, I will say, what can I say? I'm a glutton for punishment. Both Mantell and Bernini refer to their main protagonists, Machiavelli and Cromwell respectively, as he. To be met with he up front is quite jarring, but you do just get used to it. And what helps is that Bernini's writing is a lot more pointed and simpler than Mantell's. And now we're going to stop talking about Hilary Mantel. I'm really dreading this next section because I don't script anything and I'm not entirely sure I'm 100% confident. However, let's talk about Italian power dynamics in the 16th century during Machiavelli's time. Italy during the 16th century is very fractured, and indeed it's not going to become unified until the 19th century. In Florence, where Machiavelli is from, that is under the power of the Medici family, a utterly wealthy family. The Medici not only back and fuel the cultural and artistic movements going on within Italy during this time, but they wield significant political power. Now, Florence is fairly central within Italy, and all around Florence there are powers that wish to exert their own power. Most notably is Rome under the Borgias. Now, the Borgias, again, you could watch just series 1 and get the idea. It's not a very good series, I don't know what to tell you. The patriarch of the Borgia family is Pope Alexander VI. And he is very controversial, but his son, Cesare Borgia, wished to exert his own dominance within central Italy. Cesare Borgia, also known as the Prince, also known as Valentino, of which I'm going to refer to him as Valentino, wants central, strong, dynastic power. Meaning that the Borgias, remember, the patriarchs, the Pope, not only wield significant political power, but religious power. We have the Sforza family in Milan, who have a lot of military power behind them. We have Venice, who have a lot of maritime power. And we have the papal states. Not only do they have the backing of the Pope, papal states influence the rest of Europe. And everyone is currently looking at Florence.
And the group that you put your money on better be the one that wins.
There are a lot of power games and internal strife currently going on. There is one man who might have the answer to this. Little Florentine Machiavelli, who dreams that in order to overcome all of this trouble, all of this tension, Italy just needs to unify. Well, that doesn't happen until the 19th century, does it, Machiavelli? So what are we going to do? Soderini has a plan for Machiavelli. He is going to spy on Cesare, all while Cesare Borgia, also known as Valentino, is going to attack the Republic of Florence. Machiavelli, would you believe, isn't entirely comfortable with this idea, because if he's found out to be spying, he knows that Valentino will just kill him. Soderini insists, and therefore Machiavelli trots along with very little on him, almost to the behest of the local prostitutes, who ask Machiavelli if they would like to spend the night, and he has to say, "No, I haven't got any money." F's in the chat for Machiavelli. I mean, he's just left his wife like 1 day ago, but he's very upset about this. This is the setup to the throne, and Machiavelli is presented to Valentino. And here, Valentino says that Machiavelli is going to write about him. Machiavelli is going to write about a prince and show how ruthless and how brutal, but how fair that he is. So Machiavelli is to write the prince, all whilst spying on said prince.
Always trying to be not one but 2 steps ahead of...
I really feel that every time Machiavelli sits down at that desk to write, you can see him going like, "Oh no, what do I do?" Machiavelli is not Machiavellian. Like, we need to stress this. Machiavelli is really quiet and generally just panics his way through the entire of this novel. And you can't blame him when he's just seen Uliaveri being tortured to the absolute nth degree. The difficulty for Machiavelli within this task is not that, like, he really wants to skanoodle with Dianora and under Valentino's eyes, in which he shouldn't be doing that. But it's the fact that Machiavelli is actually drawn to Valentino. He understands what Valentino is doing, and while it is ruthless, while it might appear unjust, he is maintaining political power. Machiavelli is a great writer, but Valentino wants to make sure that what Machiavelli is writing, how he is portraying the prince, is in the best light. And we see the personal dynamic and tension between Valentino and Machiavelli exacerbate and alleviate through the process of this writing. Now, the stress that happens within the throne is twofold. Machiavelli needs to appease Valentino in order to save his head, but remember what he's meant to be there for. He has to appease the Republic of Florence.
Yeah, that's a task and a half.
So he has to undermine both parties in order to get out alive. Machiavelli is reporting back to the Republic of Florence, but in between the lines of his writing, he has some invisible ink, so he can truly write out the plot of what Valentino wants to do. Which means you have the invisible ink in the italics and the nonchalant, ambiguous letter in standard. I cannot stress enough, the first time that I came across that, I genuinely thought I caught illiteracy. While Machiavelli is trying to navigate this seemingly impossible task, all being burdened with everyone's political wants, we get to the end of the book. We do a Virginia Woolf's To the Lighthouse. We just speed up time for all of 40 pages. We jump 11 years into the future, 1513, where Machiavelli has finished writing The Prince. It is hard to articulate why this happens when the other two books within this series haven't been published yet in English. So I have no real reason why we jump so hard and so fast. The epilogues at the end of The Throne are more confusing than they are clarifying. I imagine a lot of people, don't know much about the man Machiavelli himself. And now that the manuscript is complete, I don't know what happens up until it gets published 29 years later. I don't know what. I suppose we're just going to have to wait and see. But there is one question that I want answered, and that is that The Prince is evidently a important and significant work. However, is Machiavelli himself an important and significant person in history? To bring it back to Mantell's trilogy, the difficulty here is that I knew enough about Cromwell, I knew enough about the Tudors. You know, the trajectory of this novel. What Hilary Mantel has to do is captivate you knowing that information and pulling it off to where it is still a gut-punching and somewhat novel experience. The difficulty for me is that I just know nothing about Machiavelli. And to be fair, I don't really know what Machiavelli does within The Throne, apart from he likes riding his horse, looking out at the sea, and writing about the prince. Is this sustained within the other two books? Well, it can't, because the manuscript, The Prince, has just been finished. We can't be spending 20 years just on horseback looking at water, surely. But then we have Machiavelli being tortured. Is he tortured for a long time? I have no clue. I have not the foggiest. But is Machiavelli's own life worth a story? And I suppose some people would say that about Cromwell. Was Cromwell that important and that significant to have 3 books written about him? It's a fair question, but remember, Thomas Cromwell was the right-hand man of the most powerful man in England. Machiavelli is an envoy and a writer. I would say that The Throne has satiated me enough with questions that my appetite is whet for the upcoming sequels. I am eager to figure out the answer to what I want answered. But I cannot stress enough that if you know nothing about Machiavelli, this is going to feel like homework. It's taken me a month to read this, and I've struggled at times. But again, very much looking forward. So I'm going to give The Throne by Franco Bernini a 7 out of 10.